We have meeting available by Zoom. But if you are here in this room, I would respectfully ask that you mask up. Your refusal to do so jeopardizes the opportunities for other people who have come here to testify in person. We have masks available, and again, I would respectfully ask that you not jeopardize other citizens' right to participate in person. If anybody has any sway with those chaps, that would be really helpful. Okay, it is now 5:30. If everybody will please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Take your hat off.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Everybody please silence your cell phone. Okay, today is September 23rd, it's Wednesday, and welcome to this special public meeting. For the record, my name is Commissioner Susan Goodgeesy. I have the honor of chairing the commission this year. Directly across from me is Commissioner Jim McCormick. To his left would be Commissioner Andy Hunthausen. Karen Rutherford will be managing the Zoom part of this meeting. Chris Cronick will be doing the transcription of your comments. Greg McNally, planning. Peter Italiano, planning. To my right is Nico Hash. He's with the county attorney's office. And directly behind me is Roger Baltz, and he's our chief administrative officer. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Now I want people to know a few things. Number one, the presentation that we made yesterday is on HCTV. The morning's session is already on, and that includes the presentation from planning. So if you would like to refresh your memories, that is available on that. At 7 o'clock, we're going to take a break. And we are going to recess at 9 o'clock. And if you have spoken before, we ask that you let people who have not spoken to us yesterday speak first. And then if you want to have another crack at it, that will be fine. And I think that you're all familiar with the format, that when you speak, and we'll do 2 people in person first, then we'll go to 2 Zoom people, and Karen will be managing that part. We also have an ability to call in. And I think with that, we will go ahead and get started to hear Resolution 2020-84, a resolution of intention to create both zoning districts and regulations for the Helena Valley planning area. And we heard the presentation from the staff yesterday, so I think we will just go ahead and proceed with public comment. Okay, so all right, very first off, because he got a little bit shorted yesterday, we don't want that to happen again, please come forward. State your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And you can take off your mask because we're going to be disinfecting between speakers.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, my name is William Gowen, Gowen. I reside at 8229 Avocet Drive in Helena. I stand before you tonight as a representative of the Helena Association of Realtors, of which I'm an affiliate member. I'm also the chairman of the Government Affairs Committee. So lucky me this year. I think it's kind of like our commission chairman, sometimes you get the year when all the fun happens, and it is a bit of a challenge. So over the past, since late December, after the first listening sessions, which I attended, one in the North Valley, attended all of the other meetings. We've had a Zoom conference with county planning and county officials. I went to all of the planning and zoning meetings. One I had to Zoom in on because I couldn't get out of the office, but all the rest of them were there for. And it's been a long, trying discussion. And what it comes down to is, in the beginning, I think everyone needs to understand that whenever something that is supposed to get public information out on that happens in December and January, and that's when the notices go out, it's a really bad time of year to get people noticed. They're concentrating on their families, their holidays, and it's not a good, effective way to do things. So in the future, I would hope that the county would remember those things, because some of my experiences in working with legislative things over the years, that you have to be aware of rules hearings in December, because somebody's trying to sneak something through. And so it may give a bad perception. So that's something important for folks to remember. As a member of the committee, we've debated this, worked at it, looked at it, discussed it at length. And many of the things were discussed yesterday by other presenters on some of our points, and these have all been given in writing. I think one of the things that I want to just touch on a little bit is that current subdivision regulation mitigate the impact of development is what they're designed to do. Now, we've been told that they are ineffective, and I disagree. Now, maybe some of those that were created in 1972 or 1974 were ineffective, but the ones that we have on the books now are very onerous, and they are very effective, because I watch the subdivision process in my job every day. I'm one of the owners of Helena Abstract Title Company, and I perform land closings every day, a lot of them right now. So I think that's one thing that we want to touch on is that maybe some of these things that were created under previous regulations, and they have been corrected. This really is pretty onerous when we start putting on another tier of regulation. And I think yesterday some of our speakers discussed what that costs in the real estate transaction. And when we look at what the median prices have done in our valley and in our area, it's pretty astronomical. And if you look at the Bozeman area, it's even worse. So we need to be very cautious about what we do in our economy. We have a ceiling when it comes to wages in Helena, Montana. Most of the folks that live here, 80% of our households, have at least one government paycheck. And I've been at the legislature, and I don't see a huge cost of living raise coming in anytime soon. So that's something to keep in mind. Housing affordability is critical. And this is a bad effect on it. Okay? There's also a couple things that I think that are really important to note. That the Water Use Act in Title 85 of the Montana Code deals with water. So the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation oversees each one of these things, and when they come in, the availability of water is dealt with when subdivision goes through review. It's already there. Okay. Title, the sanitation, our wastewater issue is dealt with very thoroughly by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. And that's under 76.4 in the Montana Code. So these things are already in place. It's important to know these things. Another thing that I noted that I don't know got touched on very well yesterday is the importance of agricultural portfolios and agricultural lines of credit, and what that value in real estate in the farm and ranch and commercial system is. That was the most amazing lending systems in the world. The fact that we own our land, we have use of our land, and we can borrow against it makes us unique in the world. Makes us the most powerful economy in the world by far. It's not nuclear bombs, it's not battleships. It's the fact that we own our private property. So whenever anything affects those rights, it has to be looked at very carefully. When you look at the line of credit for an agricultural producer, and you look at the fluctuations in commodity prices from year to year, or maybe over multitudes of years, look at the price of cattle right now. If our ranchers don't have that line of credit, they're given the keys to the bank. And if you put a 10-acre minimum in rural areas, you take away the development right that is part of that valuation. I have checked this with the bankers. It is going to cause a devaluation in the lending portfolios of our regional banks. They don't sell those loans. They're not like the mortgage loan when they get sold off to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or Bank of America. They stay here. That affects our banks here, the ones that give us the service, the ones we put our paychecks in and our savings accounts. So we have to seriously look at that. We have to study that. We have to make sure that that does not affect that portfolio. That is where we are at with these things. And don't just ask me, don't take my word for it. Ask your banker. I'll let you know. Because that also has a direct effect on what creates affordable housing. And we've heard this quite a bit. What I'm watching right now is a triple whammy. We've got a huge influx of people looking at where we live because of the numbers of COVID-19 that we have. Because of the rural nature of our state, the beauty of the place we live has been discovered. Your 4,000 units is based on BC before COVID. I think you're a little low. If you think it's just going to be 10,000 people, I think you're wrong, because I'm seeing it. The number of folks that are coming in here from out of state is pretty large. I've never seen a refinance boom due to low interest rates and a purchase boom at the same time. We are flat out inundated. Okay, so we're going to have more than those units. And those people are not looking to live in an apartment. They're not looking to live on top of each other because that's what they're leaving. That's what they're going away from. So, is there good things in zoning? Yes, absolutely. But when we look at this density as the only real thing that's going to protect that ideal, drop the 10-acre minimum, we can start talking. Keep the 10-acre minimum, we're not going to discuss this anymore. We cannot live with that at all because it's a paintbrush. Somebody took a big map took their paint by number skid and they made it all pink. They just washed it over saying, it doesn't matter if there's plenty of water in that part, or there's not plenty of water in this part. Well, let's throw our sleeves up and find a real solution. Let's look at the areas that, hey, maybe there are some spots that we need to do this. I think we even know where some of those are. But there's others that we don't. We don't need them. So that's a definite issue, and I think it needs to be addressed before we can proceed with this proposal. And I'm going to end this. I'm sorry I've gone on a little longer than I normally do. But I want to tell you a little story. It's a personal story. I was working at a title company in Bozeman, Montana, while my wife was finishing her degree at Montana State University. I had a 1.5-year-old son, and we lived in married student housing. The day my wife graduated, she got a job the next day at Montana State University. You know, that's like a golden ticket in Bozeman, Montana at the time. But the market had changed so much that I had a full-time job, my wife had a full-time job, but we had to move because there was no more student. Can't live in married student housing anymore. Could not afford daycare and purchase a home. So I had to find a job elsewhere. I had to leave the state of Montana, like so many of our young people do. If this goes through and it drives my grandchildren away, I hold all of you personally responsible. Thank you.
Okay, so don't go, Mr. Gown. We're gonna read your comments back, double check them.
Okay, Mr. Gowan, I have your representative of the Helena area realtors, affiliate member, excuse me, and the chairman of the Government Affairs Committee. He attended one of the meetings in the North Valley, also attended all of the planning and board meetings. And you wanted, your main concerns were giving notice during the months of December and January, and it's a bad time for community due to holidays. Please try to remember this when providing notice. Current regulations do mitigate the problems indicated in our growth policy. The current regs, you were told that the current regs are not effective, but they are very effective. Excuse me. We look at our median prices in the area, it's astronomical. We have a ceiling of wages in Montana, and at least 80% of homes have one government paycheck. Then you touch on our Water Use Act that deals with water. The DNRC oversees the availability of water. And you touch on sanitation that is dealt with by DEQ, referencing Montana Code 76, Section 4. Then you touch on agricultural portfolios and lines of credit with agriculture. Being able to own our own property and borrow against it is a great benefit of living in our country. The zoning will cause devaluation of the lending portfolios in our local banks. You have to make sure that portfolio is not affected. This is confirmed by our local banks. You go on to discuss affordable housing, that we have a large number of people looking at our area due to our low COVID numbers. The number of lots needed will not satisfy the influx of people wanting to be in this area. They're not looking for an apartment or to live on top of each other. Zoning can be good, but not density zoning. And let's roll up our sleeves and work on a plan that works for areas that need it, not blanket zoning.
Yeah, the only correction I would say is that 80% of the households in Helena Valley.
Okay, hold on before you come in.
Helena Association of Realtors.
No, I have HAR.
Okay, that works.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Who's next? Somebody who has not yet spoken to us, please. Come on up. And you can take your mask off because we just cleaned up, so go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, County staff. I'm Jonathan Reese. I'm a professional land surveyor, as well as a title examiner at First Montana Land Title. And I'd like to discuss alternatives to zoning. So, first of all, zoning is the most common form of land use regulations used by authorities to regulate and control the development of land within cities. Zoning laws enacted by local governing bodies define how specific parcels of land may be developed and used. Zoning laws place restrictions on the extent to which a land may be developed. Land use plans and zoning are often assumed to be the same thing. There's there are distinct elements that serve different purposes for the planning and the development of cities. I won't go into that part. There's 6 types of land use, and there's 5 major types of zoning classifications, and that's a separate topic, but I'm just kind of giving you a backstory of zoning. So, as you notice, in the United States, since 1930, the zoning regulations have been the standard mechanism in zoning cities, and I'm emphasizing cities. So, why do we need zoning in the county? Urban areas, rural urban areas. So I did some research, and through other cities like California, Rhode Island areas, the population was their main concern for zoning. When it's a very heavily populated area, they realized zoning is the best solution. So, zoning ordinance laws vary from different areas. So an alternative to zoning, like in other states, and in this state as well, we have deed restrictions. We have citizen initiative zoning, which isolates an area specifically in the county. We have covenants. There's also plan unit developments that can be done. So those are ways to basically prevent economic, I guess, development or things like growth or use and regulations. Zoning can have unintended consequences and actually prevent economic growth and flexible provisions for affordable housing and other things that have been previously mentioned, which I'll just skip that part. So with those alternatives, I'm hoping that we look at those instead of just diving right into zoning. Zoning, if you really believe we're overpopulated in the county, being the 4th largest state, probably the 5th in population in the United States, just to give you an understanding, there's only 5 states in the United States that have every inch zoned. And all the other ones, they do not. And most of those are just city zones. There is county zones specified, like I mentioned, citizen initiated, those kinds of things. So, in these states were Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island, which have millions and millions of people. We are barely above 1 million in the whole state. We are the 4th largest state. So, I hope you reconsider alternatives to zoning, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Reese, please don't go, and
Oh,
we'll.
you don't have to read it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I trust you. Okay,
Thank you very
thanks.
much. So now, while they're reading that, Karen, do we have anybody who is raising their hand on Zoom?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, very good. So let's hear from our next speaker who has not yet spoken to us.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is Byron Roberts, and I live at 901 Dearborn here in Helena. And just got a few comments here. First, it surprised me that the county zoning proposal was not proposed to be countywide. This is unusual, and I believe that breaking out a small area of the county was the intent of Part 2 zoning. Was not the intent of Part 2 zoning. Citizen initiative zoning was created for this purpose. Zoning a portion of the county provides inequities throughout the county. It would be like zoning only a portion of the city. I know of no other counties in the state that have done that. In fact, the intent was, and you know, it's not in the law, but the intent apparently was to provide counties an opportunity to zone the county. Citizen initiative, initiated zoning was actually provided for this purpose. And again, zoning for a portion of the county provides inequities throughout the county. I have a question of the planning staff, and that is, does the staff or growth policy envision future zoning in other parts of the county, including Augusta, Lincoln, or the Wolf Creek areas? I must also say that 10-acre limitations are totally inappropriate. This will lead to subdivision of 10-acre tracts or 10-acre ranchettes. The demand is there, and dictate against affordable housing. On 10 acres, wells and septic systems are a given. The developer must only provide when subdividing roads and a few other amenities. On 10 acres, wells and septic systems will be built. Going back, I think, in history, the state of Montana recognized that portions of the state were being sold off in 10-acre parcels, both domestically and abroad, and that was back in 1972. And in 1973, subdivision enabling legislation was proposed and adopted by the 73 legislative session. I'm providing you an advertisement in Japan Times in 1972 offering 10-acre parcels and copies for the staff and the commissioners. I can see the advertisements now, and that is own a 10-acre ranchette in the beautiful Hudson Valley. And that's what you're setting yourself up to. As I say, there are people buying lots and homes in Montana unseen. As an old urban planner and planning consultant, I grew up at a time when provision of infrastructure by local government guided growth. Local governments provided streets, roads, sewer, water. Local utilities provided power, phone service, and then bottom line, when those incentives were there, subdivisions followed. Many of these services were paid for through SIDs or special improvement district, which typically were paid for over a 10-year period by the homeowner. This was planning. Local government departments were in charge of planning and for directing growth. And in this particular case, you know, I think it's incumbent upon the county to direct that growth contiguous with urban areas. Although recognizing that there are some people that vie for you know, larger tracts of land. Another question, planning, interestingly enough, was a kind of a component of engineering and architecture profession, and not the regulatory profession. And I think things have evolved over the years. So I have another question for planning staff. What has the county done to provide infrastructure? And I think that's key, especially if we're looking at providing development contiguous with urban areas. And so what has the county done to provide infrastructure and incentives to direct growth in the county? I think it's time to direct and incentivize cluster development in the Lewis and Clark County. Thank you. And I have this.
Okay, and so, Mr. Roberts, if you just want to hold tight and,
I've given a verbatim here.
oh, awesome, good on you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's see.
I'm Jerry Steve with Steve Industries, and I live on Applegate Drive. I think it's interesting that we have more worry here about mass than stealing of private property. And, that we have officers here for public servants. And I do thank the officers for their service, but if you work for the people, I just don't understand what's going on here and why all the security. That being said, this 10-acre thing takes jobs from a lot of people. Right down to people with little cleaning businesses, people that mow grass and clean up yards, and all the way into the construction industry, which is what we're in. But on top of that, what it does is open up this valley to people that aren't from here, and it takes away land from children that are from here. It makes it unaffordable to us to live here. And if public servants think that 10 acres is affordable, then maybe the paycheck should be looked at.
Mr. Steve, would you like to sit tight? We'll review your comments. Okay, so we'll go again. How many people do we have on the line with Zoom?
21.
21 people. Okay, so do any of them have their hands raised?
We do. We have one person.
Okay, let's unmute them and hear them out.
Mary Ann Dunwell, I've requested you to unmute. You can make your comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Chair Goodgeesee, Chair Goodgeesee, Commissioner McCormick, and Commissioner Hunthausen. My name is Mary Ann Dunwell. I live actually in the city of Helena, sort of the outskirts city, 2811 Alexis Avenue. I serve in the Montana State Legislature and as a state representative for Montana House District 84, which is Helena and East Helena. And while my constituents are not residents of the valley, they're more the East Helena and then the eastern part of Helena. I do serve on the local government interim committee, and we spent the majority of the interim committee meetings dealing with policies and issues facing county governments, such from wastewater systems that are failing and polluting the water systems, firefighting wildfires, water scarcity, infrastructure inadequacies, and affordable housing. So I get my testimony is more about, I get the property owner rights things, absolutely. Folks work hard for their properties and they have a right to their property. What goes hand in hand, in my opinion and in my heart, is that property owners also have a responsibility to a community. So this is not a zero-sum game where somebody wins and somebody loses. It must be win-win for all interests. And to continue growth in the county that is resulting in, I'm sorry, I mean, the word makes you cringe a little bit, but sprawl, where we're seeing incredible traffic, a lack of infrastructure able to keep up with the development, and scarcity of water. The one development that had its water turned off, I know that may be exception rather than the rule, but I think we're looking at the long game here. And somebody who had some really good testimony mentioned the children. We need to think of the children. I think we need to think of the children in the long game and livable communities for our future generations. We don't want unmitigated sprawl for future generations. And in closing, I'd like to kind of bring up a point that we all know and have heard many times, that is in our Montana Constitution. It's Article 2. It guarantees us to a clean and healthful environment as an inalienable, unquestionable right. And then there's Article 9 that goes into a little bit on how we make sure we do protect a clean and healthful environment. And Section 1 states protection and improvement. The state and each person shall maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment in Montana for present and future generations. And that each person is each property owner and prospective property owner and community member as well. Then the Section 2 or the number 2 deals with the legislature, which I'm a member of. Legislature shall provide for the administration and enforcement of this duty to make sure we have a clean and healthful environment. So that's one of the reasons I'm testifying here this evening. We have to look, in my opinion, as our community, our metropolitan Helena, Lewis and Clark County community as a whole. And again, please don't make it a zero-sum game, and please keep in mind that each of us has a responsibility as a member of this community. Okay, I don't mean to sound preachy, because everybody who's made comments has very good points. I just want to bring up these other issues. So I must say I do support the zoning plan. I'm probably one of the few, but I think it's really so important for our future generations to look at this, to do this now before it's too late. Thank you very much for hearing my testimony, and good luck in the rest of the hearings tonight and then on Monday and with your decision.
Okay, hold up, Representative Dunwell, because we're going to have Ms. Chronic read your statement back to you to verify it for accuracy. Are you good with that?
I'm good with that if you want to wade through the whole thing, Madam Chair.
These aren't the official notes, but we just want to make sure that we capture people's comments as accurately as we can. Of course, these things are being recorded as they are at the legislature, but we just want to make sure we capture things correctly for our purposes here today.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair Goodgeesy.
Excuse me, Representative Dunwell, I just have a summary of your comment here. You have that you are a state rep for District 80, excuse me, my mic is cutting out, for District 84. And while your constituents are not residents of the Valley, you do serve on a local government advisory committee. This committee addresses areas such as the wastewater and fire protection issues that we have in our valley. Property owners do have a responsibility to the community. This must be a win-win for all interests to continue growth in the county that is resulting in a sprawl. We are seeing a lack of infrastructure to keep up with the development, and we need to look at the long game and livable communities. You did make mention to some of the articles in our Montana law. Unfortunately, I did not catch all of your references, but I do have Article 2 allowing us the right to a clean and healthful environment. Can you please go over the other two?
Oh my gosh, sure. Thank you very much for trying to be so accurate. I appreciate it. The subsequent article in the Montana Constitution was Article 9, titled Environment and Natural Resources, and I cited from Section 1, which is protection and improvement, that each person and the state shall maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment. And it talks about the individual responsibilities. So thank you.
Thank you.
And it is the legislative committee is the local government interim committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, I have that each person and each property owner is responsibility to uphold those articles. This is not a zero-sum game, and that you do support the zoning plan, and it's important for our future generations.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else on Zoom with their hand raised?
We do have another person.
Okay, let's hear from that person because we're doing, the pattern's supposed to be 2 and 2, so go ahead.
Bernie Adams, I've requested you to unmute. You can comment when you're ready.
I'm just going to do something quick here for those of us that are on the Zoom meeting. Who's ever speaking at the tables and like that, do they have a microphone or whatever? Because you cannot hear them, and I've got my volume turned all the way up. I'm sure all the rest
How
are.
about now?
Thank you. That's all I needed for now.
Mr. Adams, do you have any further comment regarding this plan?
Do I have an additional comment?
Yes, sir.
In listening to some of the what I could understand of the people that had been speaking, you know, I have to agree with most of them that I live 5645 Empire Court. I'm about 3 miles out in the valley, and I do have the same concerns that a lot of people do. That you know, we talk about having affordable housing and so on and so forth. Certain parts of the valley do have problems with water and such as that, like the North Star subdivision and so on and so forth. But other areas do not have any issues. There's lots of reasons for the problems that go on out here in the valley. Everything from too shallow wells to whatever. The necessity of taking it to a 10-acre thing would very much restrict the amount of housing out of the valley, which of course a lot of people want to do. They want to have their nice viewscape out here, but the consideration should be of the property owners themselves and what they might need or want to do as far as everything from retirement to the right to be able to divide their property and maybe even sell part of it to their kids, and anything that's related to that for the county to stop that because they think there might not be enough roads or whatever. That type of analysis needs to be done in order to determine that the right decisions are made on how if there is any zoning in the valleys, how it's properly managed. And the big question that I have is, how far does this go? I have not looked at the latest plan, so this might be a stupid question because I haven't. How far does this go into the counties? Does it go all the way over to Commissioner Giesi's Augusta? Or does it stop at the top of the North Hills? What does this zoning cover? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Did you want to read that back?
Okay, Mr. Adams, I think that we have solved our Zoom sound problem. It was on our soundboard. Are you able to hear?
I'm telling you, it's very tough. Are you actually using a microphone, or the whatever computer or whatever is being presented with the Zoom for the Zoom connection should be closer to the head table? Otherwise, it's very difficult. Maybe you hear every 2 or 3 sentences. I can kind of understand what's being said. So.
Yes, I am speaking into a microphone, and it's really loud in the room, so we'll continue to work on that situation. I do apologize. Just so you're aware, this is being recorded as well and will be available on YouTube or listening later on.
Okay.
Commissioner,
Yes.
Commissioner DC Gregg.
Mhm.
Greg McNally with the Community Development Planning Department. For those that are participating via Zoom, we have been texting back and forth with some of the our IT staff who has been monitoring our Zoom performance and has indicated that the functionality is fine on their end. We have had some experience with other people who are using Zoom that their setup may be a little different. And we have had situations where some individuals, and maybe Mr. Adams is one of them, may just need to increase the volume very high on his computer. An alternative he could also seek out is using the telephone, and I've shared on the screen with the Zoom providers how they can call in and still listen into the meeting as well. So that might be another option for individuals who are having trouble hearing. But we are getting some indications from our IT staff that they're hearing everything just fine as they monitor from afar.
Okay, we'll go ahead with our next in-person person.
My name is Joe Nissler, and I'm addressing the employees of Lewis and Clark County, known as commissioners. As employees funded by our tax dollars. I hesitated yesterday to get up here and speak because I didn't want to come across as belligerent and obnoxious, and we know that nobody likes that. As continuing on, most of my commentary is directed towards the two commissioners who I feel have our best interest in mind. One commissioner seems to stand out and feels that don't confuse me by the facts. My mind's made up. We're going to take the property. The fix is in, as she says. And I don't think that that's fair to us. The biggest issue that I have with this zoning is the 10-acre minimums. I'm a builder here in town and developer to a certain extent, not a big developer like Kim or like Jerry, but I create some jobs in town here and employ some people and a lot of subcontractors. And this 10-acre minimum on subdivision would cripple us. The building industry in Montana, as you know it, is hard enough as it is. We deal with weather, we deal with a labor shortage right now. I don't know if you guys seen what happened with material in the last 4 months. Sheeting is quadrupled. Dimensional lumber is damn near tripled. Your entry-level home that Mark Rumpel builds in the valley is going to be $500,000 before you know it. And I just can't imagine how that's good for growth. I feel that the commission has railroaded this through and has not provided good signage, good publicity, good anything. We finally got in the paper yesterday, and I think that after yesterday's meeting and today, the lion's share of people oppose it. And yeah, we had one person here a minute ago that is for it, and somebody yesterday that live inside the city. What rights inside of the city? Well, what do they care about? They're inside of the city. What's going to happen? Where are the large contiguous pieces of ground that people are going to develop? Where are those at? The infrastructure inside the city, I just got them putting up 112 units next to Walmart over there, apartments. The infrastructure inside of the city is bad. It's horrible. To get the infrastructure inside of the city to expand and bring on these 4,000 units that everyone talks about, it's going to take years, not 2 years, not 3 years. It's going to take 10 to 15 years. What are we going to do for the next 10 to 15 years as builders? What are people going to buy? People are moving to Montana because they see what they like Jerry Hamlin says. They don't want to be stacked on top of each other. The demand that I see in Montana and Helena lately, as people move in, and it's a fact, nobody's moving out of Montana. People are moving in by the droves. There's a nice little 1.5 acre lot. They can have a shop on it, small shop, 24 by 24 shop. They can park their boat in it. They can go out and recreate it on the Great Lakes that we have right here. The Missouri River flows through, offers us all this. And I implore you guys to consider a win-win situation, like the lady that was for it. It's not a win-win when 98% of the people stand up here and are against it. And if this is such a bulletproof plan that's been in the whatever your master plan is, or that you guys have developed, if it's such a great, wonderful, bulletproof plan, then put it on ice for 6 months. Right now, we have a gray and silver cloud of negativity and bias hanging over the county. And I'd like to see level-headed decisions made after that cloud is gone. In 4 months, we hope that that cloud is gone. I wonder where you guys came up with this. Like you said, take your paintbrush and just start randomly putting it in. Put Jerry's 600 acres in it, and let's do this. Let's leave out anything in Augusta, though. I think somebody ought to go to Augusta and start building trailer parks, if that's the case. There's not going to be any zoning up there. If it was in truly of the best interest to zone the entire county, why is Augusta out of it? Jerry Hamlin, Kim Smith, Mike Hughes, those 3 people have paid your salaries from there forward. They've paid your salaries. They're not asking for anything special from you. They're just asking you to make a win-win program that works for everyone. Not that sections out all of us people that work hard and these tradesmen and all these people that are hardworking, good American citizens. They're just trying to go out and make a living. This 10-acre minimum would just absolutely destroy that. I can't even imagine how they came up with such an idiotic plan, to be honest. Where do you guys decide? Do you guys just want to get rid of responsibility as county commissioners and put all the responsibility inside of the city's hands? Do the same, do a less job, have the same pay? Because the city's going to be inundated with problems. With all this infrastructure to come in, if that's what's going to happen, if they're going to have contiguous pieces of ground next to it. Look at Mountain View Meadows and how long that's taken to take off. Look at how fast that Canyon Ridge got through subdivision. That thing is built up. And it provides great homes for people, and it's sold like hotcakes. Not that what Mark Runkle has in Mountain View Meadows is not desirable, but people need a menu. They can't just say, we're going to move to Montana and we have $2 million to buy a 10-acre piece of property and a shoebox. Because that's what would have to be built on these 10-acre pieces of property. These ranchettes that you guys talk about or people talk about, it's not going to be this gorgeous ranchette setup. If you have 10 acres, the house on it's going to be a damn mobile home to get any sort of affordability into it. You're talking about, everyone's been talking about roads and this and that. If roads are in bad shape inside of Lewis and Clark County, there's only one group of people to blame, honestly. And I hate to put the responsibility on it, but it's this right here. And if subdivisions are hard to do inside of Lewis and Clark County. I mean, it's like the laughing stock of the state, really. And it's such a laughing stock that us taxpayers, have spent $7 million or maybe $6 million paying for, maybe not yours, but the commission's wrongdoings, essentially. Let's use that money for affordable housing, or whatever it may be, roads. Instead, we gave it to an attorney and to Jared Hamlin because you guys bent him over and raked him through the coals. Why can't this be postponed 6 months? If it's such a grand plan, 2-to-1 wins. And no matter if Tom Rolfe or Mike Fosbinder gets in, if it's such a great plan, and it's such bulletproof, and it'll pass unanimously, or not unanimously, but 2-to-1, and it on ice. Let it hold. This is a monumental change that is going to affect Lewis and Clark County forever. And to just ramrod it through to make mark on Lewis and Clark County is idiotic. I implore you, and I implore Jim McCormick and Andy Funthausen. Andy, I think you're a fair person. Might not align on stuff, but I really like you. I think you're an educated person. I think that you're just, I can't compliment you enough. I think you do a great job. You two are going to have the consequences to pay if this passes through. The lawsuits will tumble like dominoes after this gets voted on. And Jim, it sounds like maybe only 2 years for you left. I don't know. Who knows what that is? Maybe it's longer than that. Andy, however long. But you guys are going to have hell to pay. And it's going to cause more and more work for you. And it's going to cost us taxpayers millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits if this goes through. That's all I have to say. I don't need any briefing back. Thanks for your hard work. Joe Nissen.
Okay, let's see. So let's have our next in-person commenter, please. Good evening.
And Gus Byram, 703 Red Letter in Helena. And I have a statement, mine is typed up, so I'll give that to you. So is it okay to remove my mask?
Yes, sir, as long as you're up there, we're gonna clean it up as soon as you're done.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Thank you. Let's sit up. Okay, there we go. Yeah, mine is not very long. Again, Gus Byram, 703 Red Letter Street in Helena. I'm a former Helena, Lewis and Clark County Planning Director, 1979 to 86 years ago, and past member of the planning board. And then I was a member of some of our zoning working groups too in the county when we were looking at this issue 10, 11 years ago. I am speaking tonight in support for continued community planning in the Helena Valley and support for the proposed zoning ordinance. Considering zoning and overall land use patterns, I would propose we think about a system of interconnected green lands, green open spaces, county park lands, voluntarily conserved agricultural lands, trails, and other open spaces interspersed with zone residential and commercial development. This is definitely doable. Such a system for the Helena Valley would be similar to the Grand Rounds open space and parkland system encircling the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And of course, that's why people come here to Montana. They want that peace, they want a home, they want an affordable home, and of course, they want a piece of the big sky and the open space. Valley zoning can accomplish three things. It can discourage incompatible land uses. It can allow for, so again, if there's a truck farm across the street from you proposed, you have a say about it. Also, zoning allows for public review of special cases. So there's a conditional use permit provision included in the proposed ordinance that allows for public hearing and public input on special and unique land use proposals in your neighborhood. Zoning can also, of course, establish basic development standards. I think a key fact that has not really been brought out in these discussions is that without zoning, the general public has no local government protections once the land has gone through subdivision or certificate of survey review. And this is really an important point. People don't realize that, okay, after the property has been developed, it goes through the planning board, the county commissioners have approved it, the development proceeds. All right, well, what happens 20, 25, 30, 40 years hence. No one in Helena is arguing that their zoning should be removed. Okay, and again, after the developer has left, what local government protections are there? Covenants are very, very difficult to administer. Finally, I wish to express gratitude for the work of you county commissioners, members of the planning board, planning staff, landowners, developers, realtors, and members of the general public who have taken the time to weigh in on how our valley can best grow in the future. I think these comments and this discussion the last 2 days have been excellent. Certainly every opinion must be respected. I would propose, of course, that we listen to all the concerns expressed, continue to make revisions as necessary, and keep going. There's still plenty of time this fall to make necessary revisions. Our county in the valley is certainly worth it, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to present testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and so you've given your written comments, and so you're good with these? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so do we have anybody with their hands raised, please, on Zoom?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, next in person, please.
I'm Lyle Hostetler. I live at 3200 Snaffle Court. I've been there for 35 years. I'm 83 years old. I'm 100% against the zoning plan that the county commissioners are proposing. It will basically take away my rights and ability to develop my ground in what I believe is a legal and prudent manner. This is land that was planned to be my supplement to my retirement, whether it be to replace a high mileage car or replace a roof on my house or pay hospital bills. This zoning would not benefit the landowner who keeps this house county running, and I repeat, the landowner who keeps this county running. I believe this zoning should never be passed in this form. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hofstadter. And if you'll just, okay, so Ms. Chronic is going to read back your comments, okay? And then you can give us a thumbs up if you're for them, if you agree with that's what you said.
I have that you are 83 years old, that you live in your home for 35 years, you're 100% against zoning. Will take your rights and ability to develop your land the way that you want, and the zoning will not benefit the landowner that keeps this county running.
Ms. Chronic, I think he also talked that he had planned to use that for retirement, medical bills, and maybe replacing a high mileage car. Okay, thank you. That's a really good job you have. Okay, so assuming we have no Zoom and no phone calls, we'll go to the next in person.
Chairman, commissioners, staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Steve Udick. I live at 2950 Fantasy Road. One of the things that keeps coming up in all of these discussions is the inability of the roads in the rural areas to handle the traffic of increased development. Any subdivision that is developed in this valley is required to put in roads that adhere to the county typical road section. This requires a 24-foot wide road with full ditches, 9 inches of road mix. Each and every lot that we stop from being developed in the county increases the burden on the existing landowners to help foot the bill for maintenance of these existing roads. There was a comment made yesterday about Collins Drive and the work that is going on out there with the flat grant, and the fact that the road seems narrower. I stopped by that area on my way home last night and measured that road. Being very generous with my measurement, that road is currently 22 feet wide after it was improved by County Public Works. The county has also developed a new standard that, of course, they are the only ones that can use, which is 6 inches of road mix that's going to be put on this road for work that is being done. This work is being done to provide the general public with access to use the BLM land above the North Hills. The county is promoting more traffic on these roads above and beyond the residents that live there, yet not even adhering to their own standards for road width and composition that they say are there for public safety reasons. I was told at a public meeting by a public works staff member that over 50% of every dollar that is spent on roads in Lewis and Clark County goes to administrative overhead and paperwork. And nobody seems to have an issue with that. Can you imagine how much more road improvements and maintenance could be done if we could streamline the administrative portion of this? This year alone, Lewis and Clark County replaced 6 of the 7 road graders that they have in their fleet. The total bill for this was just over $2.2 million. There was almost $1.2 million in trade-in for their 6 old graders, which means that they're not that old and far from the end of their usable life. Total cost to the taxpayers was just over $1 million. I recall actually looking at the bid packet that was sent out for that. And one of the things that was stated in there was that one of the requirements why they were replacing these graders were the old ones were reaching the end of their warranty period. Another point that keeps coming up is fire protection. I haven't even spent much time exploring how much further this goes, but I personally know of 2 fire protection systems that have been installed in this county for subdivisions that the fire chiefs for the districts they are in have stated that they refuse to use them. One of these was installed in 1994. The developer still has the keys to the locks on the standpipe for that system so that they can't even use it if they want to. The fire districts refuse to even come pick up the keys. There are resources that are put in, but they refuse to use them, and then they complain that they don't have enough resources available to fight fires and protect the citizens in this county. All of this cost is ultimately passed on to the purchasers of the land, which raises costs for affordable housing in this county. County staff has quoted the fact that 2/3 of the growth in the Helena Valley is happening outside of the city limits. This should tell you something. The people that are moving here to get away from being crammed right up against their neighbor in a city environment. They don't want to live in packed together towns. Yes, the county wants to reverse this, yet the county wants to reverse this trend and force people to live in town. People moving to Montana is prompting the growth and the development. It's not the other way around. The water issues have been talked about endlessly as well. People constantly refer to the well-documented water problems in the Helena Valley. However, there have been at least 2 studies done by the Bureau of Mines and Geology, and at least 2 studies done by Lewis and Clark County staff. Each and every one of these studies has come back with the conclusion that they cannot find a problem. Yet there are constantly people stating that they have water problems because they don't have enough water pressure to wash dishes and take a shower at the same time. As I have stated to this commission in the past, on numerous occasions, water pressure has absolutely nothing to do with water availability. Water pressure has to do with a poorly designed pump system for your well. You can have a 50,000 gallon tank of water, but if you put a small fish tank pump in it with a tiny pipe leading out of it, you will only get so much water out of it. In a meeting that my dad and I had earlier this year with David Ballroom, a senior hydrogeologist with Hydro Solutions here in Helena, he made a comment to us that the industry standard number that is used for an area on well and septic systems is that just over 90% of the water that is drawn out of the aquifer goes directly back into the aquifer, be it via lawn watering or through the on-site septic treatment system. So it's not like if your household uses 500 gallons of water a day, that water is gone and never returned to the aquifer. We also have a situation in the valley where there is thousands of acres of land that is irrigated for farming. A lot of this uses water from the HVID canal. This is water that is brought in from outside of the valley from Canyon Ferry Lake and put into the ground, helping replenish the aquifer here in the valley. All of this adds water to the aquifer above and beyond normal rain, snow melt off, etc. I can tell you from experience, this summer we drilled a test well out in the valley and we voluntarily did a 24-hour pump test on this well. We pumped 18,000 gallons of water out of that well over 24 hours. During that 24 hours, the water level in the well dropped approximately 140 feet. When we shut the pump test off, over 100 feet of that drop was recovered in the first 10 minutes. So I asked, where is the water shortage? People have to remember, developer is not a four-letter word. I would suspect that almost every person in this room would not have a piece of land and the home that they live on today were it not for a developer risking their livelihood and their money to develop land for people to purchase and live on. It was also mentioned at the planning board that there are people that are in support of this measure, but they're afraid to speak out in support of this in public for fear of the public backlash. However, you've heard many developers, landowners, etc., that despite having millions of dollars of their own money tied up in current, past, and future projects, are not afraid to voice their opposition to this, despite the possibility of backlash from the county, commissioners, staff, etc., on their ongoing projects. I have been to almost all of these meetings. I can count on one hand the number of people that I've heard talk in support of the zoning plan, and most of them have been in support of it with caveats. If you have not had a chance to listen to the comments that Chairman Thomas made after public comment was closed at the August 4th Planning Board meeting, I would highly encourage you to listen to it. Chairman Thomas prepared a very good speech and proposal on the issues with the zoning regulations as they're written today. I would like to finish out my comments with a quote from one of the planning board members at the August 4th meeting where they moved to recommend to the county commission to move forward with the zoning proposal. They stated, and I quote, "I would rather start from a point where we adopt zoning and immediately start fixing the things that we know need fixing." End quote. If you already know there are things that need fixing, why not fix those things before you try and pass things that are going to cause litigation for the county and waste of taxpayer money defending it? So I ask you today to please reconsider this set of regulations. This one-size-fits-all approach does not work. Let's go back to the drawing board and come up with something that is more realistic for the citizens of Lewis and Clark County. I've been in numerous meetings where the commissioners have made it very clear that they do in fact listen to the citizens of Lewis and Clark County and do not come to any meeting with their minds made up based on private meetings or anything else. I certainly hope that the commissioners have been listening to the public on this issue at these meetings and will do what is necessary to fix all of the issues with zoning as proposed before putting anything into place. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Udick.
And actually, I have a copy of my statement.
Excellent.
So.
Okay, good for you. Thank you. All right. Anybody that we have on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. Next person.
Madam Chair, thank you.
You can take your mask off.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Dee Dee Peccia, P-E-C-C-I-A, yeah, D-I-D-I. Yeah, sorry, it's a tough one. I am also here as a representative of the Helena Association of Realtors, or HAR. I've been serving on the Government Affairs Committee this year, and that has allowed me the opportunity to sit in on many of these public meetings since December. So I feel like we've had a lot of discussion, a lot of really good points made that keep being brought up. I guess all agree to that. Last year, in 2019, the median single-family home in Lewis and Clark County was $280,000. So far, in the first 9 months of 2020, the price has increased 6%. The median price is now up to $298,000. This zoning proposal with the 10-acre minimum and with the lack of affordable lots or projects in the city of Helena will only cause that price to go up and the gap in affordability to increase. I think that's a big consideration as we don't have wages or industry to support these big increases in the cost of our housing here. The other thing I wanted to kind of comment on is Mr. Udick did earlier. I realized as I sat there through these meetings, and especially the joint planning board meeting, there's a real sense of urgency. And I don't quite understand, and I question why are we in such a hurry to make such big changes that affect so many people. So I guess I listened to, I think there are 7 board members, and they take their time, it's volunteer, it's the middle of summer, and they're asking good questions, they're listening, they're asking to have questions answered, to have time to digest the information they're getting, to have their, more in-depth discussions. And it seemed like that was just denied. It was just, no, you have to meet next week. And, I come at it from a small business perspective, but I feel like that's not really fair. I don't think that rushing a process and making decisions without analyzing all of the information and having the opportunity to change and to make recommendations. I mean, we all have opinions, we all have ideas, and I feel like that's where the best policies are made. So perhaps there's a way to slow down this process. We need zoning, we need regulations, we need it well done, we need it well thought out, we need it well planned to benefit the whole community. As far as the Helena Association of Realtors, we've made our position clear. We've provided written comment, a summary of 5 points that has been submitted. And just one point that kind of echoes what I started to say is that, these regulations, as they're written, they kind of bypass that hard work that you need to plan ahead for growth. I just feel like there's a lot more conversation, a lot more of this could be better defined. Take, for example, in the draft regulations, we go back to a zoning statute or Montana statute that we're supposed to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewerage, schools, parks, and other public requirements. But it doesn't happen within this regulation. We feel like the county should be doing the hard work of coordinating more with the city of Helena to plan ahead for this growth. Figure out how to extend some of the municipal services out to these transitional areas, especially right on the urban fringe. The lines on the zoning map appear to be somewhat arbitrary. There's a whole area that dense development is discouraged. And critical infrastructure, I mean, that's just kind of the way that you develop land. You need to have that infrastructure in there. And we're kind of surprised that it hasn't been discussed more with the city, to be honest, to put in some of the necessary infrastructure for growth. So I know our comments have been submitted. I guess I just encourage all of us to work together, to keep discussing this, to keep working hard. Don't just pass it and then go back and try to fix it. Now's the time to really keep at it and keep working to the benefit of all of the community members here. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, Chris?
I think it's fine, especially since we have a written comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next in-person commenter, please. Next in-person commenter, please. Somebody who hasn't spoken to us yet, yesterday or today.
Hello, my name is David Brandon, live on 6705 Applegate Drive in the Valley. And I've been to many of the meetings. I don't think I hit all of them, but definitely at the planning meetings and the Valley meetings. And like everybody behind me has said, it's pretty much 100% against this, and I think the one part that everybody can agree on is 10 acres does not work. And I don't know why that part is not resonated with anything, anybody here, because 10 acres doesn't work. It's like, and I heard your comments, whether they're accurately quoted, is that if people had come to the meetings earlier, you know, and voiced their opinions that, you know, this would have changed. Everybody from the beginning had said, well, the first 160 is, you know, not the right acreage. Then it was, you know, 20 acres, and that's not the right acres, and 10 is not the right acres, and I can propose there's no acreage that is the right acres, other than the Montana state law, which is 1 acre per well and stuff, if you're gonna do that. So, why don't we just follow that? And, you know, I think we could all get on board with zoning. I mean, that one guy, you know, said, you know, there's some benefits of zoning. I did quite a bit of development in Silverville County, which is 100% zoned, and was able to do things there. But you know what? There was no acreage minimums there. You know, they just didn't do it. So it's something that why we are, and again, this has been from the start. 160 is not the right acreage. You know, we're shouting it from the bleachers everywhere else. 160 is not the right number, and yet we're not heard. And we're told that we didn't come to the, you know, table soon enough. We've been there from the start. I know I have. I know, you know, I'm a realtor also. I'm on the Government Affairs Committee also, and you know, you just aren't listening. And I don't know what we got to do. What do we have to do to say, you know, that's not the right solution? And I bet if you took that one part out, there'd be a whole lot of support for this. Or at least people would be willing to look at what else is in there. Because I can tell you, you know, Peter said in one of the first meetings I was at, that yeah, these landowners want their cake and eat it too. That's like, yeah, you know, those landowners have worked all their lives in some cases for this land. And why shouldn't they have their cake and eat it too? Because, you know, some of the comments in favor of the zoning are people in the city, they're, you know, they have nothing to lose by, you know, making 160 acre minimums out in the valley. All of us out in the valley have a lot to lose. I got a meeting this morning with a lady, she's probably 80 years old. She's got a 20 acre lot on Applegate. That's right up to Al Rose's yard there, so not exactly prime. But she's got a 20 acre lot, and she wants a price on her lot with a mobile home on it. And it's like, well, you know, I could probably tell you what it was worth yesterday, but you know what? After, whenever this vote comes through, it'll probably be half. Because that 10 acres or 20 acres can be divided into 5 acre parcels right now. And you get probably that 70, 80 or 70, 80,000 per acre. And this is a lady that doesn't have means. I mean, she's not going to be, you know, doing anything, you know, crazy with this money that she may make, you know, by paying for, you know, car, things like that. So having her not able to use her investment for something other than, you know, basically a view easement or, you know, city folk is just a little bit obscene. And so the 10 acres is not the right number, 20 acres is not the right number, 160 acres is not the right number. So it just needs to be put into 1 acre, and I bet you'd have a lot more agreement. I guess the one thing too is I have fairly large tracts. I have a couple of 75-acre tracts. And so one's in the urban growth area, or the mixing zone, I guess, and then the other one is definitely above Lincoln Road, so it'd be 10-acre minimum. And so that one, there's all 5-acre tracts around it. So, I was thinking at some point maybe I'll do 5-acre tracts there, which would be 15 5-acre tracts. Well, if I can only do 7 tracts now, I guarantee you that's far less money, and it's something that, again, what's the difference? Because people bordering me all have 5-acre tracts, so how come I'm the one that has to, have 10-acre tracts now? And again, there's theoretically a process in which, the legal powers will grant us the right to use our property as we see fit, or as we think we, would meet the market conditions and would meet our needs. But you know what? I've been to a lot of zoning, through zoning process. I've been through a lot of subdivision process, and I can tell you, there's not always a yes in there. And if there is a yes, it's yeah, but okay, here's another 5 forms you gotta fill out, and another study you gotta do, and another, $500 in fees, and another, 3 months of time. And, it burns up the summer, and then pretty soon you're in the winter, and, you've lost a marketing opportunity. So, it's not good to have so much government. I mean, the subdivision, process is onerous. It's terrible, actually. I mean, Sherry can testify to it. I've done subdivision in Lewis and Clark County. It was in 2000 and 2005 for the most part, but I can tell you it wasn't easy. And I did stuff that I thought was very acceptable and well-rounded. I know Andy was on the board at that time. But what I had was 5-acre tracts, and I did Crestwood development, which is Crestwood Lane. I also did Greenfield tracts, which is Greenfield Loop. And I also helped my neighbor farmer do some 5-acre tracts on Norris Road. And I think it is a very beautiful place. And we did all that without zoning. 5-acre tracts. Right now, I couldn't do that because, you know what? It's going to be up to somebody to, bless me to do what I think is right. And I just, Ronald Reagan said it best: the government that governs least is the government that governs best. And you guys can't make a decision better than the market, better than all of us can. Okay? Those two up there, as far as planners, they do a good job, but you know what? They're not coming up with ideas on how to develop. They're up there telling us, no, you can't do this, you gotta meet this, you gotta do that. And they do a good job of telling us no. And it's just a little bit frustrating for everybody when we hear, the price of housing, where it is, almost 300,000, as Edie said. And I know when I was in my 20s and 30s, I definitely couldn't afford anything close to that. So, and not sure I could now. But that's my statement. And I encourage you not to pass this and just to drop it. And the planners will still be busy telling us no. And things will still get done because the market forces will let the good things happen and stop the bad things from happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brendan. And were your comments written down, or do you want to have Mr. Connick review for it? Okay, anybody on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair.
It is 7 o'clock, so we're gonna take a break for 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Zoom participants, do we have anyone who has their hands raised?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's go ahead with our next in-person commenter, please.
My name is Steve McGill, 3020 Old Bogwater Lane. My question is, why pushing something like this through and you're going to be losing one of your people that's going to make this decision? Why should that be pushed through? Why wouldn't you want some new blood that's going to be being brought in? This impact, she'll be able to walk out of it. Nobody would even know anything about it. Do you think that's fair? Thank you.
Would you like to read Mr. McGill's comments back? Okay, you ready, Barbie?
Yes.
Okay, who's next?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, staff, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Mike Fossbender. I'm a county commission candidate. I live at 3930 Bowie Boulevard in the Helena Valley. Technically, I don't have any property that would fall under this right now. We have a subdivision in process, a minor, that is 26 acres, and we're going to split off one that's less than 10, but it's already in process, so I assume it's grandfathered. But if you approve this, it will add hundreds of thousands of dollars to my real estate portfolio within a year or two, and I'm still standing up against it. I don't think it's any secret. I think I've made it pretty clear for several months I'm against this, but I just want to make sure it's officially on the record that I oppose this proposal as it currently sits. There's been talk about the fixes in, and my good friend Bob Kohler said that he had to remove an ad from the independent record because Commissioner Giese called and said the fix isn't in, which I'm glad to hear that it isn't. I'm glad that everyone has open minds, because if you look at the headlines in the paper today and the comments again tonight, this thing can't be approved. The public is not in favor of it. You guys represent the public, so this needs to be tabled and more work needs to be done on it. In 2002, approximately, I got a letter from the county about a subdivision that had been proposed that was adjacent to a piece of property that I owned. So I read through it quick, and one of it was they were going to require the developer to pay for some offsite roads. So I sent a letter to, I don't think it went directly to the commission, I think I sent a letter to the staff. I said I would really rethink this requirement to have this developer pay for these roads. Of course, as history has shown, it was ignored. And about 10 years later, we, the taxpayers, have wasted, well, have had our taxpayer dollars wasted because of these lawsuits from the offsite roads. This proposal here is poised, maybe it won't be the 7 or 8 million or 10 or whatever it ended up being with the payments and the staff time and attorney time, but this is still gonna be another waste of taxpayer dollars if we push this through. It needs to be tabled. It's not ready for the prime time. It needs to go back and more work needs done on it. One thing that I don't think has been brought up yet is the East Helena School. I have a daughter who's in high school out there. She's a sophomore. We worked for years to get that high school approved so that we could get it built because of a legislative restriction. We finally got it done, but part of building that was projecting the growth and the tax base that was going to come in. If this is approved, this is going to hurt that tax base. It's going to make it difficult for the school to meet the projections that they had. They did not project anything based on 10-acre minimums being put in the district that would limit how many new homes, new tax base, new students could come in. It was, somebody brought up, I think other people have too, about the farmers and ranchers and their operating notes. This is a big deal for them. It's what keeps them in business. And this is going to be a huge hit for their portfolio. So I'm going to benefit, they're going to lose. And that's again, another reason I'm against this. I shouldn't get that for free. And so when they go to the bank to get their loan to operate on, if their property value has just got cut, you know, their property values right now are based on that it's subdividable. And after this goes, it is no longer subdividable. They can do 10-acre minimums that makes it doesn't work. So their portfolio has just got down. So their borrowing capacity has been decreased a huge amount, and we can't do that to them. So I'm going to be brief. I'm going to just try to cut this off here, but there's been a lot of hours spent on this, and I appreciate all the time that the staff and the commissioners and everyone else involved has done trying to get this through. But I'm going to go on the record right now that if we can table this, I will continue what you've started, what you would like to get done. I will work with both of you commissioners if I'm elected. I'll work with Ballroom. I'll work with Dick Tweed. If we can get Tim Davis to come back in. 10 years ago, we had a development standards working group. We were working on zoning that would really work. We spent a lot of time on it, and the commissioners decided we weren't going fast enough. So it got, basically we got scrapped. All our work was for naught. And they forced through a zoning, it ended up in court, and there was an emergency zoning. So this was 10 years ago, and here finally 10 years later, we're getting some zoning again, which we need. We've got to plan for the growth that's coming, but it set back progress by 10 years. If you force this through with as many people are against this, it's going to set it back again. I don't think anybody has stood up and said, we don't want zoning. Almost everybody has said, we would like to help. Let's bring us to the table. Let's get all the stakeholders. Let's do this right, not fast. So I would urge you to table it. Again, I will, if I'm elected, I will continue to work with everyone to try and get meaningful zoning through. But with this 10-acre minimum, this just isn't working. There's some good stuff in this plan, but it needs a lot more work, and we can get it done, but it can't be done as it sits. So again, thank you for the time, and I urge you to table.
Okay, Mr. Fossbender, so let's have, you're good?
Yep.
All right, okay. Okay, we're gonna get this cleaned up. Any hands raised, any phone calls?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, so who would like to speak to us next in person? Please come up.
Hello, my name is Skylar Ritter. I'm the owner of NetSims Technologies, a local company responsible for creating and maintaining the HelenaZoning.org website. I am personally opposed to the zoning plan But the reason I'm speaking to you tonight is to provide some numbers regarding.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm going to hold you for a second. Could you spell your last name for me?
Ittner.
And first name?
Skylar, Skylar.
Thank you, Ms. Rittner. Go ahead.
Reason I'm speaking to you tonight is to provide some numbers regarding how many people are concerned with this issue. The website has had an average of 127 visitors per day, with a total of 3,807 visits over the past month since it was launched. 443 signatures have been submitted on the website in opposition of the zoning. Over a dozen names have been added tonight since this meeting started. There have been visitors from across 43 U.S. states, mostly in the Helena area. The interactive proposed zoning map on the website, which allows people to easily find how the zoning would affect their property, has been viewed over 1,000 times. The main page on the website containing info about the zoning was viewed over 4,800 times. A page with in-depth information about the zoning written by industry experts was viewed 671 times. And 429 people have left the website to read Helena IR newspaper articles about the zoning. The actual numbers are even higher. Technology such as AdBlock, which many people use, can prevent recording of some visits. I'm also not including all the people who commented against the zoning on social media. Thank you for reconsidering this zoning plan.
Okay, hold up. So let's see. You want to? I'll tell you what. Would you like to email your comments if you like? I mean, we've had them. We're recording this live, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so, but Ms. Chronic didn't get your comment. So are you okay with just taking?
I can email it. Do you want me to just email
Yeah,
it?
could you do that?
Address?
That would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dittner. Okay, thank you, Warby. Who's next? Who else would like to speak to us who has not yet spoken to us? Anybody who has not yet spoken to us? Okay, we'll go ahead with return customers. Who else would like to speak to us who has spoken to us before? Jerry, do you have something you want to add?
Madam Chair, members of the commission and staff. My name is Jerry Hamlin. I only have a couple quick comments. I live here in the Helena area. I just wanted to talk about some of the testimony here tonight. The first thing that I heard was from Mr. Roberts, and he had an advertisement from 1972 about 10-acre parcels in the Helena area being sold in Japan. So it looks to me like this kind of a zoning proposal takes us back to 1972. Now, during the interim, we've had a lot of changes to subdivision regulations. And it started out where first they wouldn't allow anything less than 5 acres, and then it was 10 acres, and then it was 20 acres, and then it became 160. And now we're going right back to what it was in 1972 with 10-acre chunks. And when you think of a 10-acre chunk of land, one of the people got up tonight and said, I want you to think of Minneapolis, those areas where we have lots of green paths and parks and walkways, beautiful roads. I'm going to tell you, that isn't going to happen on 10-acre chunks of ground. 10-acre chunks of ground will do exactly the opposite. Because those developers, I'd like to know what size those parcels are that he was talking about. Because I'll guarantee you they're not 10 acres. It's financially impossible to put all those amenities in a 10-acre chunk of ground. So to me, this is a return. The other gal used unmitigated growth. There hasn't been unmitigated growth in the state or this county since 1973, because the law in 1973 was the institution of the subdivision regulations. So Unmitigated growth to me means that kind of growth where there's no controls. That's not a true statement. So I think she's living in the past when she says unmitigated sprawl. But we are going to create unmitigated sprawl right now if this zoning goes through. So those are my only comments. I won't hold you anymore. Thank you for listening.
Okay, are you ready for Ms. Garnick to read back?
Sure. I don't envy your job.
Thank you. Okay, you made reference to Mr. Roberts, who had an advertisement from 1972 for parcels of land in Helena being sold in Japan. Those were 10-acre. And then it made reference to us reverting back to 1972 with our 10-acre parcels in our zoning plan now. And we discussed Mr.
Gus Byron?
Yes, sir. Mr. Byram's comment on open land and his reference to St. Paul area and the beautiful green parks and open land there. And there's no way to have that kind of open land talked about on an acre. And then you referred to a comment regarding unmitigated growth. There's not been unmitigated growth.
Since the institution of the 1973 subdivision regulations.
Yes.
Everything was regulated since that time.
And with this plan, we will have unmitigated growth.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, super, thank you. Who else would like to talk to us one more time? Anybody else want to talk to us one more time? I heard there was one gentleman in here who spoke yesterday who said he wanted to talk to us one more time, but I don't see him in the room now. We will stand at ease until we get our next, until we have somebody else who wants to comment. And that's all we're doing tonight, is just taking public comment. We're not going to be answering any questions, because as we discussed yesterday when we were putting the ground rules out, we will be amassing all the questions and they will all be answered at one time after we have time to respond to all the questions and comments.
Madam Chair, we have someone on Zoom
Oh,
who's
good.
raised their hand.
Okay, all right. Let's hear from him.
Representative Dooling, I have requested you to unmute.
So this is Mr. and Mrs. Representative Dooling. This is Joe Dooling, Julie's husband. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So commissioners, I wish we could all meet in person instead of over the computer. I'd like to take at this time as one of the farmers in the valley and one of the new farmers. Julie and I didn't grow up in Helena. We moved here because, quite honestly, this is one of the best irrigation systems in the nation, possibly the world. It's got two 2,500 horse pumps at the base of Canyon Ferry that pump water 120 feet up a steel pipe, 3 miles through a mountain, and has 25,000 acres backed up by 1 million acre feet. I just got off the swather myself to come here, and I don't have a Zoom, so I had to use Julie's to testify. And we bought all of our land with my partner in the last couple of years. And I have no desire to subdivide it. We farm it, we put pivots up. But land in the Helena Valley is running $6,000–7,000 an irrigated acre, which is 40% more than the statewide average. But it's worth it because it's got good water, and the banks see it's a safe investment because, we are in the urban interface. Of our 8 pivots, we have somewhere around 100 neighbors. When a neighbor calls me with an issue, I got to have them tell me where they are because I don't know all my neighbors because I have, 80 acres or 80 80 some neighbors. So my concern about this is there's been some talk about how many parcels are in the 10 acre zone, about 7,000 parcels. Only 2,600 or so of them are at meet the above 10 acre minimum now. But it's even more concerning to me, and I had a conversation with Commissioner McCormick on this. It's even more concerning to me about the numbers of owners, individual owners. Only about 10% of the owners of the 7,000 parcels are affected by this. So your ruling, if you pass this as presented, on the 10 acre minimums, you're affecting only 10%. And I just don't think that's good law. That's good governance to pass something that such a small amount of people are affected. Now, you guys have every right to shove this through. You've heard a lot of negativity about it. I get where you're coming from, and I know all you guys very well individually. Served on the fair board with each of you guys. We've had conversations. I know you guys struggle with how to manage what's going on in this county. I get that. I'm the first one that is complaining about the traffic, and when I go down Montana Avenue, I have a mile of traffic behind me. There's just a lot of traffic. I get what you guys are trying to do. I just don't know if this is the vehicle. I encourage you to reconsider it, take some time, get the landowners' input on this. I would love to see agriculture in this valley protected. As I ran for Congress, I was the big agriculture advocate. We got to protect our agriculture. I get that. So I'm just encouraging you guys to take a step back. That's all I have.
Are you concluded, Mr. Dooling?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, so if you want to hold up, Joe, we'll have Ms. Chronic read your statement back to make sure.
That's fine. I think the gist is there. I trust it. I trust that what I heard you, it's nothing new, but I trust that you guys got what you got. I don't envy your job.
Thanks, Mr. Dooling. Okay, so who else would like to speak to us? Is there anybody else who would like to speak to us? Oh, good.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to speak. Excuse me.
And your name is Kim Smith, correct? Kim.
That is correct.
Kim, K-I-M newspaper.
Yes.
It's not Ken, Kim.
Kim.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I do believe that with the majority of people, one size does not fit all. That being said, I also think that one negative can really sour the whole process and everything that's been done somewhat unfairly. And I want to speak to some of that a little bit. It astounds me that I don't believe that I have heard one comment, negative or positive, about the urban growth area or the infill area. I think that is the best part of this proposal by far. I can agree with a lot of things that it puts forth. I think the urban area and the transitional area are going to have far more influence on the growth element than the rural area. And the rural area is pretty much the only thing we've heard about. The urban and the transitional area is certainly going to encourage and promote density growth right where you guys would like it. Not demand it, encourage it, because you have left four lot minimum, which is high density. In fact, in some spots it might be too high, but there are provisions and regs to allow for a little higher density. On one hand, everybody is upset about not being able to have high density, and in the other area, there would certainly be high density. The transitional area is extremely workable. From 1/4 acre lot to a 10-acre lot, if I understand it right. And again, I think these areas are gonna have much more impact on growth in Helena than the rural. Again, I think to talk a little more about the rural area, I don't think that a 10-acre blanket is wise. It certainly proved to be controversial. I think it has brought a layer of negativity to these proceedings, which again, I think the other zones, it's unfortunate for other parts of the zone. There's lots of areas out there where 10-acre minimum is not appropriate and is not needed. There are areas out there where it's certainly needed and appropriate. The devil is always in the details, and that's figuring out which is which. And I don't believe that Lewis and Clark County Planning or the commissioners want to or are able to figure this out. So I have a couple things that I'd like to suggest that would maybe help move this process along so things can be figured out. I think you have to allow the people to do what they want with their property, but I certainly think it would be advantageous to promote areas that you want to see lower density. If 10 acres was by right, and if there was no off-road prorations, I think you would be amazed at some of the areas that are high up against the valley that would turn into 10-acre tracts, and which is what you desire. I can think of hundreds of acres that I think it would happen on. I mean, literally hundreds of acres. I think that you'd be surprised by the effect of promoting people, encouraging them, rather than telling them. I think it would change things dramatically. But you're also going to have people that have property up there that are going to want to do something a lot different. And that's why you have your subdivision regulations. If you think that a subdivision is inappropriate, you guys will scrutinize it. And you may hold it to a high standard of showing that this subdivision will work there, that it's good there, that things are adequate. And a lot of the areas that you have put into the rural area fall into this category, a lot of them. And they should be developed. But that would give you promoting large areas. Some people would do it, some people wouldn't, but you at least have control and you'd be able to look at the subdivision regulations. The worst part about the 10-acre minimum, in my opinion, isn't Jerry Hamlin, isn't me, isn't anybody like us. It's the people out there that own 10 acres. There's lots of 10-acre tracts out there. They would like to do a family transfer. Or they would do a family transfer and give them to their kids, and their kids would have the option. I did this once. The kids would have the option of selling them later in time, or go to college. Part of them went to college, part of them didn't. Family transfers, BLRs, village release or rent, minor subdivisions. The people out there that have, the gal here who spoke so passionately, I believe she said she had 9.98 acres. She should have the option to be able to do a minor subdivision. She road, what you lose on allowing large subdivisions not to pay off-site road improvements, you'll gain on multiple small lots, some small lots that are developed. I don't think it's a net loss of income at all for Lewis and Clark County. And the off-site road improvements are important. They need to be used. The county had to buy 5 new road graders, as I heard earlier. That's because they got one of the reasons is because they got a grade applicate about 10 times a year with the traffic that's on it. And if you don't get a little higher density, that problem's never going to go away. So I think the small tract owners out there are the most heavily affected by this, and I think that's unfair, and I think that's what you really, really need to look at by encouraging large parcels, but allowing small parcels. And in my opinion, most of this controversy is gone. And again, I'd like to reiterate, I would hate to see the baby thrown out with the bathwater, because I think the urban and the transitional zones, I think they're a great thing. They're a great thing for developers. They're a great thing for providing lots. I hope we go forward with those. And I'm sure there's people in the audience that disagree with me, but that's all right. Thank you for the time to speak, and I don't need to hear it all over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Who else would like to speak to us tonight? Who else would like to speak to us tonight?
Hi, Commissioners. Hi, Possible again. What Kim just described was what we on the Development Standards Working Group were working on. We were creating in the transition area incentives to draw the growth to there where it made sense. Instead of using a stick, we were using a carrot. So again, I mean, Kim nailed it. It's rather than prevent it, create incentives to put it where it should go. We were studying, where's the water, where's the infrastructure. Areas next to the city were required to build to city standards. There's a way to do this. We were making good progress with it. So I would just urge you to bring those people back to the table. Let's get that Development Standards Working Group going again, and let's work on this, and let's make this a win-win for everybody. So, thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond. Anybody else want to speak? So here's what I think we're going to do, Mr. Hash, Deputy County Attorney. We've given everybody a chance who is here. How about Zoom? Anybody still with us on Zoom and who has their hands raised?
No one with their hand raised, ma'am.
Okay. So it puts us in an interesting conundrum because our meeting is scheduled to last until 9 o'clock, but we seem to have exhausted public comment. So what do you suggest legally we need to do to make sure that no one is deprived of their ability to meaningfully comment to their local government? You want to use my microphone because I think I stole yours.
Is this one? Yep, no sorts. Madam Chair, Commissioners, maybe at this juncture we take another just 10-minute break. Folks who are here, you guys can certainly leave, but I think because we've noticed it up and that we would keep this meeting going until 9, I think we should stick with that plan. And while we may be hanging out here for a while, there still might be someone showing up. So.
Okay, all right, but if I can, I just want to reiterate that anybody who's here, what I'd like to do is to have you finish up your comments, and if somebody new comes in, then I guess we'll hear them out. Nico, is that all right? Okay, so anybody who is here we've heard your comments. Thank you for coming. We're gonna be here, I guess, checking our phones. So we'll take at least a 10-minute break. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'll do that. Next week. Tomorrow.
We're just waiting to see if anybody else comes in who's not yet spoken to us. And we're just giving people a chance to come. Nobody's here, and so we're going to recess again. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
We have 22 participants, but we have no one with their hand raised at the moment.
Okay, so I'm going to defer to Mr. Hash. Nico, how would you suggest that we continue for the rest of the evening?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think at this point, maybe we'll just take another 10-minute break and we'll go live in 10 minutes. And so if anyone walks in or if anyone on Zoom also wants to have their comment, they can do that at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do have one person. Tom, you didn't speak to us tonight, but you did yesterday. Did you have anything you wanted to add tonight? Okay, thanks a lot. We're going to send at ease for the next 10 minutes. We're waiting for other people to come in who have not testified. We're waiting for other people. It is now 8:04, and we'll wait for another 10 minutes, and then we'll check in with you again.
Some kind of a audio.
Is there anybody on Zoom who has their hands raised?
I'm at zero.
Okay, we just want to make sure that the public has every possible opportunity to.
Nobody think is gonna raise their hand on there?
Okay, I've been listening a lot. I was there yesterday afternoon. I listened in the morning. I was been to a number of the planning board meetings and listened to a few of them. I went to some of the early presentations. My wife and I live at 111 Alfalfa Road, which is just west of Green Meadow. We're in a special zoning district. I believe it's number 39, Racetrack Meadows 2. Our zoning district is 10 acres, 10 acre minimums. A lot of the land around here is that. There are, though, pockets of smaller parcels. I think most of it is probably where people want it to be. I think a lot of these, there's more building going on as you go further west, but a lot of these places have been here 10, 15, 20 years. I've been listening, trying to figure out what I wanted to say. I'm basically in favor of generally, well, I'm in favor of planning, in favor of comprehensive planning. As I've spoken to you before, I spent 3 years with the Citizen Advisory Committee when we redid what was then called the comprehensive plan for Lewis and Clark County. I was living at the city at the time, and I represented the Plan Helena group. We learned a lot in that process. I guess it ended up in the 2004 plan, which is when I read the current growth policy, was never had any implementation strategy written for it. And I've read through the 2 volumes of the growth policy. I wish I could say that I'd gone back and read them in more detail like I intended to this summer, but life happens. I've really been trying to figure out how to comment. I'm not a big fan of minimum lot size zoning. I do believe that there's been a lot of movement in the country to different ways, whether it's performance zoning or, different ways to kind of get what we need as a county for the most efficient use of our infrastructure money and services money and what communities want, and finding where that meets. I've heard a lot at both the planning board meetings and again with this current set of meetings about a lot of things, as you have too. And one of the things that I want to note is I believe what you're voting on when you vote on these proposed resolutions is, one, the creation of this zoning map, and two, a set of regulations or this zoning ordinance to go along with the map. And these are being done to implement recommendations in the growth policy. And so I guess that's, a question that can be answered when you do your question answering. And that reminds me, I'm curious, is that going to happen on Monday, or is that question answering happening at a later date before are you going to do that when you have your meeting in October, before you have your deliberations? I guess that's a question I have.
Okay,
When you're,
hold up 1 second, because we're going to have Greg McNally with the planning office answer that.
good, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Milton, Commissioners, Greg McCown with the Community Development Planning Department. The commissioners have on their schedule a plan to continue to take public comment on September 28th, both in writing and orally, at 1 o'clock on September 20th, right here at the Great Northern, but also on Zoom. They will continue to receive written public comment up until noon on September 30th. So the oral public comment will end on the 28th, and the written public comment will be allowed to continue to come in until September 30th at noon. And then the board begins to plan its deliberations on October 6th at 9 a.m. again at this location of the Great Northern, and as well on Zoom. And it's at that point in time that through those deliberations, the staff will be responding to individual questions that were received during the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. And I forgot to just thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. And you've been very patient with so much. And I know you've heard some people say the same things many times, as did the planning board. And I've learned a lot listening. Like I was saying, having worked on the what became the 2004 plan, I came in not knowing much and left learning a lot of the complexity. And this is difficult. And so the question is, what tools do we have as a community to, get the kind of, when we're 20 years down the road, have we accomplished what we want to accomplish? And one of the things that's really kind of struck me is since you're only voting on the rural zone ordinance or regulations, however they're appropriately named. And a lot of people are speaking to the whole concept of zoning Helena Planning Area wide in general. And some are, of course, we've heard, are very adamantly opposed to the 10-acre minimum lot size for the rural zone. And have said all kinds of things about what that'll do. It's either going to just, destroy your property values, or going to make them so expensive that people can't afford to buy it. And I kind of understand some of the differences. That's sort of different if you have a 160-acre agricultural piece. But there's not a lot of people that are realizing that there is an opportunity for the PUD if you have a 20-acre lot and you want to put 6 houses on it. If there's water, if you can meet the standards. That, of course, if it's up north of Lincoln Road, doesn't necessarily meet the goal of reducing density in the rural zone. But like someone said yesterday, a lot of infrastructure has gone in on Lincoln Road with the turnaround there. And don't we want to put, more houses where we've spent money on infrastructure? So there's lots of complicated questions here. I do think it'd be hard to work with this ordinance with so many people against it. And as somebody said earlier tonight, we're not even talking about the suburban and the urban transition zones. And, you know, I understand why you started with the rural, but, you know, it could be that part of this desire to go back to the drawing board for those that truly do want to try to figure this out. I think we need to look at all this maybe more holistically. And I've thought all along that if we could figure out a way to do it, if we got some working groups going in some of these different areas in the valley to sit down and think about, you know, what would be, you know, actually kind of ask people to read through the growth policy, because there's so much good information you gathered with that. And to build on that and say, so here's what we think we've learned, and, you know, what tools do we have? You know, what do they want north of Lincoln Road, the Bob Valley Market area? What do people want that to end up looking like? What are the people between York Road and Canyon Ferry, which is a lot of 1 to 2 acre lots? There's still a few larger lots there that aren't developed. You know, what kind of build out would they like to see, and what makes sense from an infrastructure point of view? Now, I understand that's a lot of staff time, and staff has already spent a lot of time staffing these evening meetings. You know, it's not in the budget. So I know there's a problem in trying to do this, but if we could figure out a way to do it and get buy-in on where we're going, we'd have a bigger outcome. And a big piece of this, I think, has to be how we work with the city. I know that in the growth policy, it was mentioned that there's a memorandum of understanding between the city and the county to work together on these things, particularly in the urban and transition zones, and that not a lot has happened there. I don't know how accurate that is, but the city just updated their growth policy, which I thought they did a good process with that. And I like the fact that when they got done, they had a short, mid, and long-term implementation strategy. Now, you know, they have to be held to that. And again, that's requires staff resources and budget. And the city, as everybody knows, is having their own difficulties right now. And, but it's really what we need to do as a community. And we only have so many infrastructure dollars totally, even including what we can bring in grants. And if we can use infrastructure to create the lots that we hear the builders and realtors crying for, I think we can find ways to do that. And I picked up the growth policy tonight while I was listening to just see if there was something in here that I remembered seeing that I could call to our attention. And in chapter 5 of volume 2 on page 5-4, there was an analysis done of developable areas in the urban standards boundary A and B. And the claim here is, after taking out things that probably wouldn't be developed, that there's potential for 8,000 housing units right around where there's already city infrastructure. Now, if we need 4,000 units in the valley to meet this projected growth, then a lot of us would argue that that's probably gone up, given we seem to be getting increased interest in moving here, whether it's COVID refugees or just you know, people wanting to leave the cities and move to the country. We're going to need to accommodate growth. And there are people, I think, that do want to live on urban standards. And I appreciate there are people that want a 2 acre lot in the country or a 5 acre lot. I mean, we're on 10 acres, and I really love being here. I would hope that whoever buys this land from us would want to live on this parcel and would be able to afford to live on it, that taxes wouldn't force them to need to somehow break it up. So how do we do that? How do we create these, you know, how do we get affordable housing? I think there are a lot of people that want affordable housing that's walkable in the cities, and there are people that want rural lots. So we have a lot of work to do to really make this real. I would challenge the building association members and the realtors to equal their adamant belief that, you know, the 10-acre minimum is really making things worse with some suggestions. Like I said, I have reservations about the 10-acre minimums. I'm particularly concerned about the working ag lands in the valley. I mean, if you look at the Google map of the valley and you look at that patch of green that's on the irrigation district water from York Road up, you know, up to Lake Helena, not only is beautiful, but it's providing ecological services. It's, as some say, it's recharging the aquifer over and a lot of that's kind of probably moving toward the river away from a lot of the growth. But if the 10-acre minimums out there in that rural zone are going to make it harder for them to farm, you know, that's a consequence we don't want to create. I was lucky enough in my summers as a teenager to work on a ranch here in Montana. I flood irrigated and I raked hay and I built fence, and I have a brother who's now ranching in Muscle County. I appreciate the agricultural heritage of this state, and I love what I see in the valley. The other challenge I'd make to the building association members and the realtors is, if this zoning is so awful for their industry, how is it that their fellow building industry association members in Gallatin County and Missoula County and near Belgrade and Billings, who are living with zoning, at least a lot more zoning than we have here, are getting by? I think one thing I would like to see the county do, and I kind of wish we'd done it sooner, is there is need for more education to the public on this. And, you know, what of other Montana areas that are facing much more rapid growth than we have here? You know, what's worked and what hasn't worked? You know, what do people like and what do people not like? I mean, if you go to the Gallatin Valley, you're going to hear about the affordability problem, which is a real problem, but you know, the builders have been busy. I really think the city and the county need to work together. They need to create a couple of working groups, maybe, you know, on different pieces of this, to see how we can create affordable lots, deal with our limited infrastructure money. I think that might become more limited. You know, we're looking at an potential economic downturn that, you know, nobody's really been able to figure out just what's going to be coming in the next few years. So that's another recommendation I have. Let's see, I had a few other thoughts. You know, and I think I might stop with that. I appreciate it's been a long night for you guys, and I have a few more things that I've wanted to say, and I think I might try to come in Monday, and if I haven't been coherent tonight, try to say a few more things that are concrete, and maybe write it up for you so you can refer to it when you're working on your questions. So I appreciate the chance to talk, and appreciate your patience in listening to everyone. Like I say, I'm a proponent of good planning. I think we need to do it in the Helena Valley planning area. I have concerns about the, you know, the bird's eye, Rimini outside the valley proper being asked to you know, go look at such a kind of rigid zoning regime. I don't know if that's really called for. I think that those areas might be able to come up with something better on their own. And I don't think it has to be onerous. I think we can start without it being, you know, I don't know. I'm just thinking we need to, obviously, you've heard a lot about going back to the drawing board. I guess I hope I figure out a way we can do that. I'm in support of you trying to implement this growth policy. I think it's an excellent document, and I'll stop there. Thank you very much. You don't need to give me the feedback. I am going to write this stuff up, and I trust that you're catching most of it, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milton. Maybe we'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, I'm planning to come in. Thank you.
Okay, it is now 8:32, and we are going to stand at ease for 10 more minutes unless we have somebody else on Zoom. Karen, do we?
We do not have anyone with their hand raised at the moment.
And how many people are still on the call, please?
14 participants.
Okay, thank you very much. And so for the people, for people on Zoom, we are pretty much emptied out here in person, but we are going to hang tight here until 9 o'clock because we want to make sure that everyone has an adequate opportunity to give us their testimony, speak their minds on this proposed zoning proposal.
No, nobody has their hand raised?
No one.
Okay, we are back at our microphones, back at our desks, and it is now 8:40. Ms. Rutherford, do we have anyone who is on the Zoom call with their hand raised?
We have 13 participants and we have no one with their hand raised.
I'll tell you what, we're gonna just hold tight for about a minute in case people might wanna call in, and we'll give them a chance to raise their hand if they would like to do that. We have no in-person people left to speak. So the people who are left to comment, at least at this point, are present via Zoom. Is there anyone with their hand raised?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna stand at ease again, and we will fire up again at 5 minutes to 9. At 5 minutes to 9 at 8:55. We're standing in recess.
Yeah.
1 o'clock on Monday the 28th.
All right. Let me know when.
So somebody get ready to do that.
I will.
Give you the high side. Okay, it is now 8:56. And the chair, we have, do we have anybody on Zoom? Do we have anybody on Zoom with their hands raised?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay. So it being 3 minutes till closing time here, the chair, and we have no one present in the hotel here in person. And so the chair will entertain a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair. I move to continue this meeting to Monday, September 28th at 1 p.m. in this venue, the Great Northern Hotel.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that this hearing will be continued until Monday, September 28th, 1 o'clock at the Great Northern. There will also be ability to comment publicly via Zoom. We hope that we have lots of public comment on that day. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. All right, we are now at that point of the meeting where the commission will take public comment on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not on today's agenda. Is there any public comment? Seeing no one come forward, we are adjourned.